The following podcast is a presentation of This Is Infamous. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to Just the Worst Podcast, episode number 26, to be perfectly precise. I'm your host, Billy Donnelly, who you can find at joeblow.com. This is Infamous, and right here at Just the Worst Podcast. And as we do week in and week out, talk about the latest movie news coming out of Hollywood, sort of putting it in as best perspective as we possibly can, and giving you some food for thought to consider as I lay out my opinions on the matter, and sort of open up a dialogue with you to think about as you get a well-rounded sort of thought process as far as what the latest things going on are and how they may affect you and your viewing habits. So a couple of things this week to discuss. A couple of major things really started coming out this particular week. Last week spent a lot of time talking about the Ghostbusters trailer and sort of what that meant amongst the Ghostbusters fan base. Thought it was a bad trailer. We have gotten an international trailer, I think, that looks a little bit better in the past few days. But on top of that, still the unnecessary and unbelievable amount of hate that seems to be circulating towards that film. Really sort of troubling to me. I understand if you see the film and it just doesn't do it for you. You just don't like it. But then just move on with your life. Instead, we're just seeing what I think is the worst of people as they criticize what this film is doing as it pertains to how it is that they would prefer another Ghostbusters film to be. There's a lot of misogynistic language, there's a lot of sexist language, just a lot of hate-filled language surrounding the Ghostbusters film. So look, I understand. It doesn't do it for you, you don't like it, that's fine. To each their own, whatever floats your boat. It's just, to me, the amount of effort and energy that is now going into hating it, that's what I sort of take some issue with. But a number of things to sort of discuss also this week. And a lot of it takes place where the home of Ghostbusters is right now, and that's Sony Pictures. As we know with Sony Pictures has a major void in their film catalog as it pertains to intellectual properties. They do not have a handle on any real franchises that they control through and through. The one main property that they have owned to this point has been Spider-Man. And I'm going to get into Spider-Man in a second, but I just want to sort of lay the groundwork here for the state of Sony Pictures. They don't have many intellectual properties that they can make franchises and series out of, and further beyond that, create shared universes, connected universes that right now are all the rage in Hollywood. That's what's dominating the Hollywood landscape right now, is these shared universes, whether it's Marvel, whether it's DC, whether it's Star Wars. Universal has their classic monsters. They're trying to build something out with the Fast and Furious. Paramount's trying to build something out with the Transformers. And you look here at Sony, and they got nothing. They got nothing. You even look at something like James Bond, which is a franchise that's been distributed under Sony in recent years. But by that same token, they don't control James Bond. Eon controls James Bond. The Broccoli family controls James Bond. Sony does not control James Bond. So there is a real major emptiness over at Sony right now concerning the very thing that is making Hollywood go right now. They don't have any of it. And they're trying desperately to mine for something that might be able to fill that void. Now, they thought they had it with Spider-Man. Spider-Man, major Marvel Comics property that they were able to obtain the rights to many years ago, put forth a highly successful trilogy of films with Sam Raimi. We can debate Spider-Man 3 if you want to. But when at least you look at the whole of the Raimi films, they were more good than bad. 2/3 at least really good. You have Spider-Man, which was good. Spider-Man 2 that I think was great. And Spider-Man 3 that I think is, it's better than you remember. It's better than you remember. If you go back and rewatch it again, there's some good things in it. It's definitely not good. But I think it's better than the disappointment you felt when you saw it in theater. And once that was done, after Spider-Man 3 and the audiences didn't truly respond to it, they immediately rushed into sort of rebooting Spider-Man again with the Amazing Spider-Man films, using Mark Webb to try and build something larger. Build this bigger universe that they could quickly sort of connect and maybe spin off and span out. Being able to perhaps do something with the Sinister Six. They had grand designs on doing something with the Amazing Spider-Man, and it all failed miserably. Miserably. No one saw that and said, this is what I want. They looked at it and said, what the fuck is this? This isn't Spider-Man. Granted, the Spider-Man in the Amazing Spider-Man films is better than the Spider-Man we get in the Raimi films. But the Peter Parker, who carries so much of those story arcs, is much better. Much better as Tobey Maguire than it is as Andrew Garfield. And so you have those films where, once again, they were looking to continue building outwards, that they had to ultimately cut off following The Amazing Spider-Man 2, which box office-wise may have done all right, but creatively was a debacle. Was a vision that fans were rejecting. And as a result, what does Sony do? They do the only thing that they could possibly do, because they can't reboot a third time. So they come up with a partnership with Marvel Studios to reboot Spider-Man on the fly. To take Spider-Man and integrate him into Captain America's Civil War. And use Marvel Studios to produce and creatively work to make Spider-Man work. So Spider-Man will exist as a part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He'll still be under the control of Sony, but Marvel will be able to put their fingerprints on creating a character that once again may resonate with audiences. This is what Sony has. They have properties that they can't handle properly, and as a result, need to bring out other outside forces to fix the fuck-ups that they themselves created. That's no way to do business. That's no way to build a brand. That's no way to create anything that anyone is ultimately going to respond to, because all that means is that the best ideas for your films are coming from outside your studio. What does that say about your leadership of your studio? What does that say about what they're greenlighting? What does that say about the films that they're looking at and saying, yeah, I think people will respond to that? They're clueless. Out of touch. Completely unaware of the pulse of pop culture right now and what audiences will respond to. And so with all of that said, there's a number of things that have emerged from Sony Pictures in recent days for us to discuss here on the show that I'll raise to you, and I imagine your response will be to scratch your head in amazement that these are the plans moving forward that are supposed to get Sony Pictures back on the right track. If you thought Paramount Pictures felt like they were in deep shit right now, Sony is giving them their run for the money. Care to have an example? Oh, let me oblige you. Right now, Sony is looking to revive the idea of a solo Venom movie. That's right. Venom. The alien symbiote that is parallel in many ways to Spider-Man, an integral part of Spider-Man's universe. But they are going to make this movie a solo Venom film, and they're going to do it in a way that has nothing to do with Venom, or rather, with Spider-Man. That's right, we're talking about a Venom film that is not connected to Spider-Man in any way. We're talking about a Venom film that is separate from whatever it is Marvel is swooping in to hopefully save the day on with Spider-Man. A Venom that stands alone by itself, apart from the very hero the character has been tied to since its very creation. I gotta tell you, I hear this and I say, that doesn't sound very good. And guess what? It only gets worse. Because you want to know who's behind this solo Venom film over at Sony? Avi Arad and Matt Tolmach, who were set to produce this film. The very stewards of the Spider-Man franchise previously, who helped run that fucker right into the ground. Avi Arad, the very individual who is more concerned with selling more Spider-Man toys than he is with creating more good Spider-Man films. If I gave you a Ferrari, if I give you the keys to a Ferrari, and he said, go ahead and take it out for a drive, and you took that Ferrari, you revved up the engine, and you hit the highway, and you got it coasting along at top speed, and then you drove it into a fucking ditch, totaling it, mangling and twisting every bit of that beautiful car. I wouldn't then turn around and give you another Ferrari. I wouldn't turn around and give you a Lamborghini. I wouldn't give you a BMW. I wouldn't even give you a Honda Civic. I would give you the most beat up, run down fucking jalopy I could find. And make you prove your worth. Prove that you're responsible enough to get back on the road again before I gave you something else nicer. But that's not the way it operates here. Avi Arad and Matt Tomek have been ingrained with Spider-Man for so long, and they are insistent on doing something with Venom. Doesn't matter what happened with Spider-Man. Fuck it. Let's get back on the horse and ride again. And they brought in Dante Harper, whose real main claim to writing fame is having done rewrites on Edge of Tomorrow to write the script. Now, I'm not going to knock Dante Harper as a result. I thought Edge of Tomorrow was a fantastic film. How much of his work ultimately went into crafting it, I don't know. Rewrites are a fickle bunch in that way. It's very difficult to know who's responsible for what. But to start off right away behind the eight ball by creating a film that is not involved with Spider-Man, given the very creation of the character is involved with Spider-Man, is bizarre. Now look, further down the line, in the comics, Venom has sort of gone from villain to anti-hero. The Agent Venom thing is sort of given him new life, teaming up with Flash Thompson and creating a level of popularity beyond what he originally was, which was basically just Spider-Man in a black suit. Added some nuance to the character that before didn't really have much nuance. It was pretty much just what it was. Which was a cool looking villain that didn't really do much character-wise. So how you do that on its own, away from Spider-Man, I can't even say that it takes balls, because it's a risky endeavor. I feel like it takes more stupidity, blind stupidity, that this could work to make something like this happen. Now granted, sometimes that's all you need. But just concept alone, on the page, thinking about it, a Venom movie that doesn't have Spider-Man? It's pretty fucking stupid. Can they prove us wrong? Absolutely. Can they make a Venom solo film that is absolutely dynamite and give Sony something to hang their hat on? Sure. Is it likely? I don't know. Who knows? One will never know until we actually see it. But at least concept-wise, just thinking about it. I mean, you need Spider-Man to just establish him. How do you just establish Venom is... He looks like Spider-Man. And it's sort of avoiding the elephant in the room to pretend like, oh, Spider-Man doesn't exist in this world. When everybody already knows that, like, Spider-Man exists. Like, how do you create a Spider-Man-like character without acknowledging Spider-Man? By just digging your head in the sand and be like, I don't know anything about that other web-slinging creature you continue to refer to. It just doesn't make any sense. And once again, just further explains the state of Sony Pictures. I'm going to give you another example of what's going on over there at Sony Pictures. Back when the interview was coming out and the Sony hack occurred, and all the emails from Amy Pascal started coming out, and we started to see some of the ideas, some of the concepts, some of the spitballing being tossed around over at Sony. One of the things that stood out was a proposed crossover between the 21 Jump Street series and the Men in Black series. So I guess at this point, considering we already had a sequel of 22 Jump Street, it would basically be 23 Jump Street and Men in Black. And people heard this and they said, oh my god, what a stupid fucking idea that sounds like. How do you even make that work? How do you even square that? To have two completely different franchises be smushed together in the hopes of jump-starting something. And then it kind of went away. People talked about, another Men in Black trilogy getting off the ground. People talking about a new duo being cast with one of those partners most likely being a woman, sort of diversifying the Men in Black, so to speak. Finding, I guess, people in black. And the idea sort of went away, sort of subsided. People forgot about this crossover. That is, until it resurrected itself this past week. And we learned that Sony is really pushing this thing happening. James Bobin, best known for directing the first Muppets film, the Muppets film that came back and revived itself, revived the brand, as well as episodes of the Flight into the Conchords television show, and now also most recently Alice Through the Looking Glass for Disney. He talks to direct. He'll be at the helm here this time. Phil Lord and Chris Miller, who directed the first two Jump Street films, will merely be producing this. They'll have some creative input, but they'll merely be producing this film. Because they got to go off and do a young Han Solo movie over for Disney and Lucasfilm. But James Bobin's being tasked now with sort of figuring out how to mesh these two worlds and bring them together. Finding a new, younger, fresher Men in Black team to ultimately collaborate with Channing Tatum and Jonah Hill, who will be coming back and reprising their Jump Street roles. In a sort of alien cop movie, I guess. I don't even know how it works. They work in just two different worlds. I mean, I guess there's a way to make it work. You just go balls to the wall. Just full out. Just not give a shit. And have the Jump Street team in over their head to help solve a crime that on the surface seems normal and legitimate, but has an alien entity involved. You might make it work. And then in doing so, at the end, you could have the Men in Black use the flashy memory wiping thing to sort of set Tanning and Hill back on their own Jump Street path, and they could sort of, spread and find their own roads to travel down again. Sort of diverge from here. Have it be sort of a one-time only cool thing that has sort of a novelty to it, and then we leave it alone. It's not the norm. I guess you can maybe make that work. I think Tatum and Hill work well together with their comedy dynamic, that you could maybe make this work. Because once again, they're in over their head, and sort of the comedy comes from their reaction to the crazy shit that they're seeing, which is sort of par for the course for the Men in Black. Maybe it could work. At first it seemed like a ridiculous idea, and a cry for help, a desperate cry for help, but maybe, just maybe, you could make this concept work. Once again, as long as this isn't the standard going forward, but perhaps just a one-time cool thing that people could get on board because of the fact that they haven't seen it before. And Sony's dead set on making this thing happen. They're already aiming for a June production date to get this thing before cameras, before somebody convinces them that they should change their mind. Rodney Rothman is penning the script. James Bowman set to direct. They're on the hunt for new Men in Black. They are figuring out a way to make this work. And you know what? Maybe more power to them. They need something. Maybe this is it. The Men in Black franchise has done fairly well for them. Now, granted, you're not going to have the box office power of Will Smith behind it. Tommy Lee Jones' credibility isn't going to be there. You got to find somebody new to make this engine go moving forward, and this is going to be it. And as far as the Jump Street franchise is concerned, I don't know how much life that has left in it. Remember, 21 Jump Street, the show, only lasted for a few seasons. Now, I guess you could keep Jump Street going in the future, but I think this is probably the last rodeo for Channing Tatum and Jonah Hill. I think this is probably the last one that they can get away with before A, it starts looking a little ridiculous, but B, that they just want to go do something else, too. So this also could possibly and potentially be a passing of the torch moment from Tatum and Hill to whoever is going to carry Jump Street forward for future sequels. Because then once again, I don't think that's one that you have to really reboot He's sort of just transitioned to other characters on the fly. But if you use the characters that are already established to sort of give the rub to somebody else moving forward, then that prevents you from having to basically start from scratch every single time out. You can start to just hit the ground running, knowing that, well, they're just detectives. They're just cops in this undercover unit. You know, the more I talk about this, the more this stupid concept might actually work. The more potential I actually see in it. Do I trust Sony to see similar potential? Fuck no! You gotta be kidding me. Over their track record. Be better off having me meet with Rodney Rothman and James Bobin and talking this thing through. Because the higher-ups at Sony, they've proven time and time again, they don't know shit. Just look at the Brothers Grimsby coming out this weekend, which is, again, absolutely buried. Little awareness on that film whatsoever. For an R-rated comedy that has the potential to really make people laugh and pay money to see it. So yeah, do I trust Sony with a 23 Jump Street Men in Black crossover? Absolutely not. Do we think it could work? If things break right for it, yes. Through this conversation right now, I have managed to work my way into some acceptance that this may not be the most terrible idea I've ever heard. It's almost so ridiculous, so outrageous, so outlandish that it could possibly come together. Would I bet my children on it? No. Then again, I really wouldn't bet them. You really shouldn't bet human beings. Would I bet hard cash on it, though? I mean, what kind of odds am I getting? Also over at Sony Pictures, though, let's talk about one of the other bigger projects that they have managed to bring into the fold, and that's Stephen King's The Dark Tower. A series that has been going on for a very long time, that has a very devoted fan base, that has been absolutely curious as to whether or not this could ever be adapted in a way that would do the source material justice. Now, Ron Howard was attached to The Dark Tower for a long time, trying to make this thing work. They had a Universal for quite some time, didn't quite come together. People had hoped that maybe Warner Brothers and HBO could team up and make this thing work. That never happened. And ultimately, it was Sony Pictures that jumped into it and said, we'll give it a shot. Once again, why? Because they got nothing else. So what do they got to lose? They're reaching for straws. Whatever they can get, they're like, fuck it, why not? Let's see what happens. That doesn't mean that The Dark Tower is just any old property. The Dark Tower is a beloved property. But once again, putting that in the hands of people who are fucking things up left and right isn't exactly the sort of decision that inspires confidence. So Nikolai Arcel is now set to direct. And we got confirmation in the past few days that both Idris Elba and Matthew McConaughey are confirmed for The Dark Tower. With Idris Elba playing Roland Deschain and Matthew McConaughey playing the Man in Black. Now, this has always been an incredibly ambitious property to be adapted. Ron Howard, when he was attached, and he's producing now, but when he was attached to direct, had the idea to split it up and really round it out, to use the way we consume all our media for the purposes of telling all of the story. That they were going to have feature films and in between TV series runs, so sort of seasons in between, to sort of fill in the story, to really tie it all together, to sort of make a connected, shared universe unlike anything that we had seen. You know, we talk about the Marvel Universe and how they use their film, now they use their television, whether it's the ABC series or Netflix, in order to sort of give the viewer a little bit of everything. Connect them to a story in a way that no one else has. And that's what their goal was here. They're still aiming to do that now, to have feature films with the TV seasons in between. And Arcellus said he's going to start shooting in about 8 weeks from now. The plan is for the first feature film to land in theaters by next year, by January 13th of 2017. That is the targeted release date of the first Dark Tower film. Now look, I know they say they're shooting it. I know they say they're heading into production. I know they say they're casting this. But this thing has started and stopped so many times that I don't know that I can actually believe that they're making the Dark Tower anything until I sit in a theater and the lights go down and the projector starts rolling and I actually see something with a Dark Tower title card in front of it. Even if I just get a teaser trailer along the way, I'm still going to write it off as one of those, well, it looks like they maybe still be trying to make this thing. There's just a lot. There's a lot going on with it. It's so ambitious that, and once again, it all lives or dies by the first thing. Because if the first film comes out in January of 2017 and people don't respond to it, none of the rest of it matters. But the work is so dense. There's so much there that it would ultimately be just such a gut shot to fans to have it turn out to be one and done because people didn't respond to it for whatever reason. Didn't interest them, they just didn't like it, the movie wasn't very good. So there's a lot riding on it. There's a lot riding on all of these franchises, even going over to Warner Brothers with their DC Cinematic Universe. There's a lot riding on all of this. And I had this discussion last night on the phone with a friend about how everyone wants to copy the Marvel model without realizing how the Marvel model even came to be. Everyone wants to put the cart before the horse with the idea of building the universe and getting people invested in whatever it is they're creating without remembering that the way to get people invested in what you're creating is to just come out of the gate and make something good. Let's look at Marvel for a second. Let's take a real good look at Marvel for a second and how the Marvel Cinematic Universe got started. You know how the Marvel Cinematic Universe got started? With Iron Man. One film. Marvel didn't come out and say we're going to make all of these films and build a universe. Marvel came out and made one movie, Iron Man. And it was really good. And at the end, they gave a nice little thing, nice little add-on with Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury showing up at Tony Stark's place and introducing the prospect of the Avengers Initiative. And it got people excited. But if Iron Man didn't work, for whatever reason, let's just say people went to Iron Man and they said to themselves, this isn't for me. It wouldn't have been the end of the world. We wouldn't have looked at the greater potential for what would have existed out there and said, well, now this is a massive failure, because nothing like that had even existed before. So it would have been a nice nod and people would have said, oh, what if, and that would have been the end of it. And so what did Marvel do after Iron Man? They made another movie. They made Thor. And they made Thor as good as they possibly could. And when people went out and they saw Thor and they liked it, and they added, once again, a couple of those little Easter eggs to get the fans excited, when Thor worked, they said, oh, Thor worked. Now we can look into making another movie. And they looked into making Captain America. And they looked into making another Iron Man. And slowly, the bricks were built to create a Marvel Cinematic Universe. And then the Avengers followed. And then we ultimately had all of Phase 1. And then Phase 2 followed. And by then we were already so deep that it was fine for them to announce things in advance, to get people excited about what's to come. But it all started with one film. It all started with one good film, Iron Man. When you look at what the other studios are trying to do, they're not trying to follow that model. They want everything all at once and handed right to them. They feel entitled to have the whole thing right out of the gate. DC says, well, we made Man of Steel and it was alright, so now we're going to make Batman vs. Superman. Oh, by the way, we're also going to make the Justice League and the Flash and Wonder Woman and Cyborg and the Green Lantern Corps. That doesn't work. You make the first movie good. And you can add enough little things to build on by making another second movie good. And you go from there. But this idea of trying to make the whole franchise right out of the gate doesn't really work. You know, New Line took a huge risk when they went ahead and made the entire trilogy of Lord of the Rings, shooting it back to back to back all at once. A huge risk. Because if the first film wasn't any good, if people didn't like it, then you had two other films, then what the fuck do you do with them? I mean, you release them because you paid for it. But that's one of the rare instances where something like that worked, where you're like, well, we're just making the whole thing. But you look at something even like the Universal Classic Monsterverse that they're trying to build, where they're like, well, we're going to make the Mummy and the Wolfman and Dracula, and just work on the first fucking thing first. And make it as good as you possibly can make it. And then, when it's good, you move on to the next one. And you build on it. That's the problem I see with something like The Dark Tower. Not that it's too ambitious, but that it's so ambitious that if the first thing doesn't work, you're screwed. I haven't jumped into the rabbit hole of The Dark Tower, but I know people who swear by it. And all they want to see is something that comes close to doing Stephen King's work justice, because they find it to be such a cool property. And for their sake, and my entertainment jumping into it as film and TV shows, and then maybe the books and everything, all the other work that goes along with it down the line, I hope for it too. But it means taking a huge risk and a huge leap of faith. And people are going to get together for it. And I wish them well that it happens. But please, please, can we just go back to doing one at a time? Just go back to doing one at a time. All right, one other thing I want to talk about. Actually, there's two things I want to talk about. One, we're waiting right now, currently, on the latest trailer from Captain America Civil War to drop. So I want to go ahead and we're going to wrap up with that as we wait for that to go. As we're recording, we're waiting for this to go. So we're covering everything else, and we're going to save that for last. But the other thing I wanted to cover before we get into that is another big sort of news item. This one comes out of New Line, and this also involves a comic property with Joseph Gordon-Levitt releasing word and announcing that he has departed the planned adaptation of Neil Gaiman's Sandman. So he penned a letter on his Facebook page, which I'm going to read out to you in full so you can get the full scope of what's been going on there. And then we'll talk about this. So his letter says, and I quote, "So, as you might know, if you like to follow these sorts of things, a while back, David Goyer and I made a producing deal with Warner Brothers to develop a movie adaptation of Neil Gaiman's Sandman. Neil himself came on as an executive producer. We hired the excellent screenwriter Jack Thorne, and we started in on the ambitious task of adapting one of the most beloved and boundary-pushing titles in the world of comics. I was pleased with the progress we were making, even though we still had quite a ways to go. Recently, as you also might know if you like to follow these sorts of things, the sort of, quote, ownership, for lack of a better term, of the Sandman material changed hands when Warner Brothers shifted the entire catalog of Vertigo Comics, an imprint of DC, to their subsidiary, New Line. And a few months ago, I came to realize that the folks at New Line and I just don't see eye to eye on what makes Sandman special and what a film adaptation could and should be. So unfortunately, I decided to remove myself from the project. I wish nothing but the best for the team moving forward. I'd like to thank all the great people I've had the opportunity to work with on this one. I've had a blast with and learned a ton from David and Jack. Neil Kuykendall, Greg Silverman, and everyone at Warner Brothers have been fantastic, as well as Jeff Johns and everyone at DC. And it's been a particular privilege as well as a rocking good time getting to know Mr. Gaiman, whose generous insights and masterful work have certainly convinced me that the Lord of Dreams and the Prince of Stories are one and the same endless pattern." Now, I read this, and it makes me sad. Now, I don't have any incredible devotion to Sandman comics. I know how highly regarded they are by those who are readers and major fans of the property. But it also makes me sad when you have someone like Joseph Gordon-Levitt who has jumped right into something like this, who is passionate about doing the source material justice, not just for himself creatively, but also for Neil Gaiman, whose heart and soul is on the page in creating Sandman, but also for the fans of Sandman. And trying to do justice to that original work, trying to do something that, while it may be altered for the mainstream, is also something that when fans watch it, recognize the Sandman within it. And it feels like in this case, Joseph Gordon-Levitt was trying to do that, and New Line was not. What New Line was doing was looking for something that might have more mainstream appeal, something that the masses might respond to, something that they can try and make shit tons of money on and create the next big thing. Now, I can't fault New Line for some of that. I can't fault New Line for some of that, because of the fact that they're in show business. They're in the process of trying to do something that makes money. But, by the same token, as a movie studio, you need to understand that not everything is for everybody. You need to understand that there is a particular audience that will embrace and respond to these properties. You have the opportunity to reach out and pull more people into those audiences, into that grouping, but not everybody is going to like everything. Look at something like Deadpool, which did a ton of money for 20th Century Fox. But guess what? That movie's not for everybody. There are some people that are turned off by it. There are some people that look at it and they go, that's just not for me. And you know what? That's okay. And so as a result, you can't try and take the riskier elements of a property and soften them and smooth them out and really take away what makes something as good as it is, all in the name of making something for the masses that everybody might like. Because when you do that, when that's what you create, all you're doing is making something that's going to quickly go away. The fans, the devoted fans, are going to say, nah, this isn't what I signed up for. And they're going to split. So while it might not be Joseph Gordon-Levitt carrying on with Sandman, I would hope this gives New Line some pause as to what their vision is for Sandman moving forward. And they collaborate with the right individual who has the right mindset, the true passion for doing Sandman as it should be done, and not just to do it. Alright, let's get into Captain America Civil War, as the brand new trailer has dropped, and the biggest news to emerge from that look is that we have Spider-Man. Look, I was one of those people that sort of hoped, really hoped, that Marvel was going to hold back Spider-Man until the release in May. I did not want to see Spider-Man. I would have liked Spider-Man to sort of be the surprise that we get later watching the movie, sort of that moment where people go apeshit in the theater, and that sort of was what it was. Marvel did not want to do that. They wanted to put sort of icing on the cake of an already pretty intense trailer by giving us Spider-Man in the last few moments. And while I would have preferred they hold him off, I gotta say that I'm geeking out like crazy. While I would have liked the surprise seeing Spider-Man on screen interacting with Iron Man and Captain America inside the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Holy shit, dude! It's exciting. It is exciting. Just remember all those moments going back where you looked at the idea of Spider-Man joining the MCU and you were like really jazzed up? Well, this is sort of the culmination of that. And all it does is make you go berserk, go crazy with enthusiasm for May when Captain America Civil War comes about. Because you want to see it. You want to see the larger picture. Right now it's a taste. It's a tease. It's a giant cock tease to give you blue balls till May when we get full-blown Spider-Man in Captain America Civil War. Right now it's just a little thing for you to be like, oh my God, do you believe what they're gonna do? And to that, I credit Marvel. They know how to tweak you. They know how to poke you. They know how to get you in that moment of just unbridled enthusiasm. And how can you look at that and say that they did anything wrong? While you could say, I wish they would hold it out. Right now, everyone's talking about the fact that Spider-Man is in Captain America Civil War. Everyone's talking about the suit. They're talking about the moment. And everybody's just high-fiving and just geeking out the shit like crazy about it. And that's what Marvel needed to do in order to sell their movie. They've done it here. Bravo to them. Once again, this is how it's done, folks. This is how it's done. I look forward to being engaged in the Civil War with Captain America come May in Marvel Studios. That's it for the show. I want to thank you guys for making it all the way through and lasting for the whole entire episode. Lots of good information to process and think about. So once again, I thank you for tuning in to this particular episode. Make sure you follow us on social media. Hit us up on Twitter at JTW Podcast. That is the official Twitter handle of Just the Worst Podcast. Anytime a brand new episode goes up, we let you know there. So make sure you follow us there. Follow us at Tis Infamous. So that is the official Twitter handle of our home mothership. This is Infamous, which right now is currently undergoing reconstruction. So when you want to know when we are back up and running, you follow at Tis Infamous. And we'll let you know when everything gets the green light. And you follow me on Twitter as well, at Infamous Kid, for all of my random ramblings and musings, my stream of consciousness that will run through your head as well, at Infamous Kid with 2 D's at the end. Over on Facebook, you follow me as well, facebook.com/justtheworstpodcast, facebook.com/tisinfamous, and facebook.com/BillyTheKid. Fight through those Facebook algorithms. I know that they're a pain in the ass, but if you work really hard, you get some really cool notifications and content coming through all of our Facebook pages. And look, the podcasts, you can find those up on SoundCloud. SoundCloud.com/justtheworstpodcast. Or if you have an Android or Apple device, you download the SoundCloud app. And once you're logged in there and you subscribe to us and you're good to go, you can get all of our various episodes and all of the shows in the palm of your hand, on your phone, on your tablet. You take us on the go and you'll be able to listen to my awesome voice anywhere that you're out there. Anywhere that you're out there. SoundCloud.com/justtheworstpodcast or the SoundCloud app. Find my work on a regular basis at joeblow.com. This is Infamous, right here at Just the Worst Podcast. I have been your host, Billy Donnelly. This has been Just the Worst Podcast, episode number 26. I'll see you back here next week for a brand new show talking about more cool stuff. In the meantime, you have yourself a pleasant, immediate future. For right now, though, I'm out. I'll see you next week. Peace. Just the Worst Podcast, episode number 26, has been a presentation of Just the Worst Podcast Media.